Well, after weeks of chaos, Republicans have finally selected a Speaker of the House, and the person they chose is about as good as you'd expect. Republicans, as we've been discussing extensively, have been having a really tough time selecting who will be Speaker of the House in the wake of Kevin McCarthy being ousted. Steve Scalise, Jim Jordan, Tom Emmer, all were nominated and then dropped out very quickly. And now, finally, one person got enough votes to actually become Speaker of the House. And the person that was chosen was Louisiana Congressman Mike Johnson. And this serves, unfortunately, as yet another representation of and reminder of how extreme the Republican Party has become. The option that was able to win over, yes, the extreme part, but also the moderate part of the party, as we call it, was Mike Johnson, whose record includes things like being in favor of overturning the 2020 election, in favor of a national abortion ban, and at one point writing in favor of criminalizing gay sex. We'll break it all down as we go along, but first, here's the news from the Associated Press. Republicans eagerly elected Representative Mike Johnson as House Speaker on Wednesday, elevating a deeply conservative but lesser-known leader to the seat of U.S. power and ending for now the political chaos in the majority. Johnson of Louisiana swept through on the first ballot with support from all Republicans anxious to put the past weeks of tumult behind and get on with the business of governing. He was expected to quickly be sworn into office. A low-ranked member of the House GOP leadership team, Johnson emerged as the fourth Republican nominee in what has become an almost absurd cycle, I'd venture to say already absurd, not almost, of political infighting since Kevin McCarthy's ouster as GOP factions jockey for power. While not the party's top choice for the gavel, the deeply religious and even-keeled Johnson has few foes and an important GOP backer, Donald Trump. And it does seem like two things got Mike Johnson the gavel, the first being fatigue among House Republicans, and the second, while he has very extreme views, as we'll go through, he's less known and has very few enemies on a personal level in the GOP. So moderates, I think, felt more comfortable voting for him because his extremism isn't known enough by the American public like Jim Jordan's is for it to actually hurt these moderates politically. Hopefully we can change that awareness collectively. And on that note, here was Mike Johnson getting asked about his support for overturning the 2020 election results.
Can you help lead the efforts to overturn the 2020 election results?
Next question. Next question.
Why that would be the reaction to a very basic and important question, who knows? As Speaker of the House, would you try to do this again? That's good to ask. Would you try to block the results of an election as you were trying to do before, but now you'll have much more power to keep the guy that you like in power regardless of the results of an election? And as the New York Times writes, Mr. Johnson played a leading role in recruiting House Republicans to sign a legal brief supporting a lawsuit seeking to overturn the 2020 election results. In December 2020, Mr. Johnson collected signatures for a legal brief in support of a Texas lawsuit attempting to throw out the results in 4 battleground states won by Mr. Biden. And then, of course, Mike Johnson voted against certifying Biden's 2020 Electoral College victory. And here was Johnson back in 2020 spreading conspiracy theories about, can you guess what I'm going to say? The voting machines.
And, you know, the allegations about these voting machines, some of them being rigged with this software by Dominion. Look, there's a lot of merit to that. And when the president says the election is rigged, that's what he's talking about, that the fix was in. You know, I could give you example after example in all these states. I don't know how much time y'all have this morning, but there's some of these lawsuits have a lot of merit, and we need to exhaust all the legal remedies. But they know that in Georgia, it really was rigged. It was set up for the Biden team to win. And they have a Republican Secretary of State there that's under massive fire because he kind of went along with all of it. Nobody knows why. And so, you know, I'm not saying that everybody involved in Georgia was trying to steal the election. I'm saying that the system is set up for massive fraud and error and irregularity. And we cannot have that in our election system. And that's why we're saying exhaust all the legal remedies. We have to do that. The president knows we have to do that. If we don't, people are not going to have any confidence in the election system itself, and that is a serious problem in a constitutional republic.
And, of course, time and time again, we've learned and relearned, verified and re-verified, counted, recounted, and re-recounted, and all those claims have proven to be bogus. And the people perpetuating them knew they were bogus. That's why Fox News had to settle for $787.5 million with Dominion. It wasn't coming from an actual concern about fraud, but instead, they just didn't want to let go. They didn't want to accept that Donald Trump had lost to Joe Biden. And why are so many people bringing up this part of Mike Johnson's record? within the context of the conversation of him now being speaker, because as I've said, our democracy is the foundation of everything else as it relates to our political conversation. We can't battle it out on all these other important policy issues if we don't have a functioning democracy. And so when you see someone like Mike Johnson rising to such important positions of power who fought actively to undermine our democracy, that's terrifying and needs to be focused on. Would he try to use his new level of power as speaker to prevent the next election from being certified? A very serious question, relevant question, and a scary one. So what else is notable about Mike Johnson's record? Well, we don't have time to go through anywhere close to all of it, but just to pick a few, and we'll start with a good post on X by the account Republicans Against Trump that nicely summed this up, writing, 80% of Americans believe Biden won the 2020 election. Mike Johnson does not. Most Americans oppose a nationwide abortion ban. Mike Johnson supports it. Most Americans support Ukraine. Mike Johnson does not. Most Americans, including 55% of Republicans, say same-sex marriage should be legal. Mike Johnson voted against it. Mike Johnson voted against impeaching Trump and served as a legal defense for Trump during both impeachment trials. He also voted against establishing the January 6th committee in Congress. House Republicans just elected a terrible speaker. And that's absolutely the case. Not to mention, as CNN reports, in the mid-2000s, Johnson was an attorney and spokesman for Alliance Defense Fund, known today as Alliance Defending Freedom, where he also authored his opposition to the Supreme Court ruling in Lawrence v. Texas, which overturned state laws that criminalize homosexual activity between consenting adults. ADF wrote in an amicus brief in the case, which supported maintaining criminalization, quote, states have many legitimate grounds to prescribe same-sex deviant sexual intercourse, Johnson wrote in a July 2003 op-ed calling it a public health concern. Quote, this is so ridiculous. By closing these bedroom doors, they have opened a Pandora's box, he added. So advocating on behalf of making criminal homosexual relations, at least back then, and of course to this day, he's against same-sex marriage. Pretty bad Speaker of the House, to say the least. But he has the support of Donald Trump, which I guess helped him get the position. Let me play the closing moment from Hakeem Jeffries' speech before Mike Johnson delivered his. Take a look at this.
Let me conclude. Let me conclude with an observation about the state of our democracy. Joe Biden won the 2020 presidential election. He's doing a great job under difficult circumstances, and no amount of election denialism will ever change that reality. Not now, not ever. Throughout the years, presidents from Ronald Reagan.
I'll say this once again, I've said it so many times, but what has the GOP done since they got the majority? Investigated Biden a bunch of times and not much else. Democrats, what do they do when they had the majority first 2 years of Biden's presidency? Oversee one of the most legislatively productive times we've seen in quite a while, the list of which I've gone through a gazillion times. My consistent viewers, I know, are tired of hearing it, but the American Rescue Plan, Inflation Reduction Act, Infrastructure Law, PACT Act, and all these different things, a lot of them bipartisan. So your options are lots of issues, but actual serious governance on one side, or whatever the heck you call this. Those are our options in 2024. Before you go, don't forget to become a member at lukebeasley.com/membership to get access to a daily bonus show exclusively for our members. Plus, follow me on Threads at Luke Beasley Official, Instagram at Luke Beasley Official, Twitter or X at Luke P. Beasley, and sign up for the free Beasley Brief, a daily morning newsletter summarizing the previous day's events by going to lukebeasleyshow.com/brief. And I'll talk to you next time.